Hi there, I am here with a little tutorial on how I graft the stitches in the border for the Rays of Light blanket. Now, what I have here is just a sample little swatch that you may have seen in some of my other videos. I have just finished working the border, and I've got some live stitches on my needle, and here is my cast on edge. I've already removed the provisional crochet cast on and have strung the stitches on this pale pink waste yarn. And so you can see here, this is what the stitches look like. And what we are going to do is go ahead and weave these two ends together. Now, if you haven't already taken a look at my video called How a Stitch is Made, I encourage you to go take a look at that. I think it's a really useful video. And just as a quick refresher, here is what is discussed in that video. A knit stitch is made using 4 steps and 3 stitches. You go up from 1 to 2, down from 2 to 3, up from 3 back into 4, which is the same stitch you worked out of the first time. This creates the V shape on the top of the fabric. For a purl stitch, you're going to have the same 4 steps, the same 3 stitches, but you're reversing the process. You're going to be working from the top of the fabric, down in step 1, up through stitch 2, down into stitch 3, and back up through stitch 4. And this will create the characteristic bars that create the purl stitch. And obviously, these 2 stitches are the reverse of one another. You will also need for this video a tapestry needle. So get yourself comfortable in a nice chair. You may also consider threading a lifeline through the stitches that are on your needle. I have not done so here, but you may consider doing that. Okay, if you are ready, get yourself someplace quiet and let's get grafting. I've got my tapestry needle and I've threaded the yarn onto it, and we're going to go ahead and start by going up from underneath above through the first stitch on our needle. And again, if it helps, you can create little diagrams like this, our handy little stitch things, and have them sitting next to you so you can refer to them while you work. I don't have enough space to have them in the frame, but remember that for a knit stitch, you're going to go up from below, and then in step 1, and then down into stitch 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to find our first stitch to work into. Now the first stitch is always a little wonky. The easiest way for me is to count the I-cord rows, the V's as part of the I-cord, and come over and find them, and then work into your knitting that way. So here, remember that we're going to be essentially closing up the V gaps that are left from the bottom of your knitting. So here, my needle is going down through stitch 2 and back up through stitch 3. And if you have to do this and redo this and redo this, it's not going to matter because you have all your stitches on lifelines, and if you have to pull it out, it's no big deal. Alright, and then we're going to go back down through the first stitch. And the first 3 stitches are done I-cord, which is stockinette, which is the same as, you know, your Kitchener stitch that you're going to see all over. So, you know, if Kitchener stitch instructions make sense to you, then go ahead and use them. These are all, I mean, they're all doing the same thing. You're duplicating the path of your knitting using a needle and whatever mnemonic you need to help you figure out what you're doing is what you should use. Alright, so again, I went up through the needle, the stitch that's on the needle. This is now stitch number 2 of the I-cord. I'm going to go down through this stitch, and up through this stitch over here. My yarn is splitting a little. And again, you've got this pale colored yarn is my waste yarn, my lifeline. There we go. All right, and oftentimes I do find it easiest to slip off the stitch from the needle before I do the final step, the step number 4, and I can adjust the tension as I go along. So you can see here, hopefully, here's the stitch. This is stitch number 2, the I-cord. This is the stitch that we're going to go back into, and you can see here we've gone up. You see this V, gone through, and now we're going to go back down. And the reason I like using a lifeline instead of a second set, instead of a second needle, is I feel that it just makes more sense. I like the flexibility. You know, a needle like this is really stiff. Having the stitches on a lifeline, you know, is just, it's easier for me. If you want to use a needle, if you want to pick up all those stitches onto a needle, you know, go for it. This is all about what works, right? Like, you know, make it work. All right, up, and then where is the base? So again, when you're gonna go through the stitch that you worked through last time, right? So here it is. Oh, that is so splitty. Oh. All right. Well, don't use splitty yarn like me. All right. So we're gonna go through these stitches right here. And then we're going to go back down through the stitch that was on the needle. All right, hopefully those were easy to translate so you can see. Let's see if I can get this out of the way a little bit. You can see we're starting to hook together the I-cord. You see that there? All right, and again, those are the same as Kitchener stitch. Now, the next stitch in pattern is a purl stitch. So, again, if you want to go ahead and remind yourself about a purl, it's the opposite of a knit. So, in this case, we want the yarn to go down into the stitch. All right. And then we want to find a stitch, and again, this is the same stitch that you were just working out of. All right, let's see. Now, does that look right? Doesn't look right. I had selected this leg, and that's not right. I needed to select this leg down here. Oh, I made the mistake too. It's a super splitty yarn, so it's that I'm using in my swatch. I'm using all my sort of mystery samples that I didn't actually use in this Rays of Light blanket. All right, so we're gonna go up, and then again, we're going to go down. Down. Ah, yes. See how that looks better? Good, 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 good. All right, and then since it's a purl, we're going to go back up. Okay, go ahead and slip that one off. Now, I honestly don't know if I'll have time or file space on my camera to do the whole one, to do the whole row on camera, but I am going to show you as much as I can. And I'm sure an entire video of me grafting this pattern would be just super, super thrilling. Now, the next stitch is actually a knit one below. All right, so since we're going to treat this kind of like a knit one below, we're going to go through both the stitch and the stitch below it. Up. And then remember that we're going to go, all right, we're going to go through, see how we're going to, see what I'm doing with my needle here. I'm actually doing steps 2 and 3 at the same time because see, you know, you're connecting these two legs of the stitches. right. And then the last step is to go back down. All right, we can slide that one off. Let's pull it out. Let's pull the tension tight and see how we like it. What do you think? Looks kind of like knitting, huh? I'm gonna go ahead and remove that stitch marker. All right, so let's keep on going. I will mention before I keep going, specific to the Rays of Light blanket, here I have only one square, so I've started in the middle. It doesn't matter, but you can see this first stitch is always going to be wonky. And so in the pattern, I have recommended that you start at a corner where two squares are joined, and obviously here I have only one square. But in the pattern, if you do this, then you can use the tail from one of those squares to just duplicate stitch over this one wonky stitch to camouflage that. So that is specific to the Rays of Light pattern. So again, you can just take a look at your knitting. This is a purl stitch, so we're going to go down, and I find this gets easier as I go along because, you know, the first stitches are the hardest, and the latter stitches, you know, the pattern seems to fall more in line, your grafting falls more in line, your tension gets more even, you run out of stitches to deal with. All right, see, we're going down, pull that, and then this one goes from underneath the surface of the fabric back up. Again, if you think about how the surface of the fabric is made, how your stitches lie on the surface of the fabric, etc., I really think that's going to be helpful to you as you are grafting here. All right, so now again, I'm grafting one below. I guess we could call it that. Here I find grafting these parts really easy. You can just go straight through. You just see those lovely, lovely columns lining themselves right up. And back down. So you can see here my V's are right on top of the needle even. You can slide that right off. Tighten up the tension. See there? See how we're doing that? I will also add another helpful link that I found that's sort of more, it's intended for like Estonian lace shawls. I don't do lace. That's not my thing. My thing is lots of bright colors and weird shapes. Bottom up. Oh, see? Nope, that's wrong. There we go. I was too busy talking. All right, so purl stitch. We're going to go down. Back up, manipulate your fabric until you see your stitches. See, there it is. Again, and the nice thing about that lifeline is that you can trace the path of the lifeline a little bit. And so that, did I do that correctly? Yep, you can see the bar I just made. So then we're going to go from bottom to top, and we can go ahead and slide that stitch off. All right, this is knit one below. So I'm just going through, it's as if I'm knitting one below with my needle, right? And I mean, I don't mean to be rudimentary here, but you really are, you're making a piece of knitting with your needle. And so if you think about it like that, instead of thinking about it like up, down, down, up, down, down, up, knit, purl, purl, knit, you know, whatever. There are so many different ways to think about it, and whatever works for you is what you should do. All right, so there we go. This looks funky because, is that right? Did I do something? Oh yeah, that's our knit one below. So again, you know, once you are finished knitting, grafting, obviously you should adjust your tension as needed. before weaving in all your ends and tying off. Alright, so this is a purl. We're going to go down below the fabric. Over here, we're going to find our stitch. Go back up. Let's see, nope, see? Back up. Your stitches aren't going anywhere. There's no need to be hasty. It's all okay. Alright, back down below the fabric, up. Okay. Alright, we are getting so close. Graft one below. Go over here, you know, stretch your knitting out and look at that lifeline. That'll help you. Here, you're following the path. And again, we're gonna go back into the stitch below. The birds outside my window are fighting. All right, purl, we are going down into the surface of the fabric. We're gonna come over here and find it. We're gonna go up above the surface of the fabric. And the last stitch can be kind of wonky as you pick it up based on your provisional cast on, and you know, sometimes there is just a bit of finagling. Down. Up. Yeah. There we go. All right. So there you have it. I am going to stop there. I am a little less particular about what you might do for this last stitch. You're going to kind of treat it like you might treat any other end. So I might do this. Toss your knitting needles aside, go through, pull it through. And again, like I mentioned, you're going to use that extra tail. When you do this in the actual pattern, you're going to join at a corner so that you have the extra tail from the contrasting edge to come and just duplicate stitch over this to disguise this one wonky bit. I'm pretty good, but I'm not that good. So a little bit of duplicate stitch does you no harm. So that's how you do it. That's how you graft in pattern. I hope this has been helpful for you. Just sit down, take your time, try not to stress about it. It's just knitting. I wish you all the best. Again, this is how to graft in any pattern. Specifically, I'm using the Rays of Light border as a demonstration. Happy knitting!